Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this new episode of our E2C Podcast series. Today, we feel very fortunate and honored to have solid waste management expert Professor Brajesh Dubey sir with us. Professor Brajesh Dubey is currently Professor Resource Recovery and Circular Engineering in the Department of Civil Engineering at the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, India. He is also the chair in a School of Water Resources at the same institute. He is a well-known globally and recognized as a waste resource management, life cycle analysis, and decarbonization expert. His research has been funded by several national and international agencies such as United Nations Industrial Development Organization, National Geographic Society, USA, International Transport Forum, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, Paris in France, World Resource Institute, UK, Alliance to End Plastic Waste, USA, Circular Initiative, Singapore, Canadian Foundation for Innovation, Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, Indo-German Science and Technology Center, including Department of Science and Technology in India, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Auckland Regional Council in New Zealand, among others. Prior to PhD, he has 4 years of industrial experience working as an environmental engineer in petrochemical refineries and offshore oil platforms. Dr. Dubey is the author of 185 journal papers, 4 edited books, conference proceedings, 35 book chapters, and 27 full conference papers with almost 9,000 citations as per the Google Scholar. Professor Dubey has delivered more than 75 invited presentations in various countries in the world, including Canada, US, China, Germany, India, South Korea, Thailand, and UK. Professor Dubey has served or currently serves as an associate editor or editorial board members of 5 different journals, served on various professional committees, including the State Level Advisory Committee for Solid Waste Management, Ministry of Urban Development and Urban Affairs, Government of West Bengal, Kolkata in India, co-chair of member Organic Waste Facility Public License Committee, City of Guelph, Ontario in Canada. Well, Professor Dubey, once again, a very warm welcome to you on our E2C podcast show.
Thank you for having me on this podcast series. I really feel honored and privileged to be here among all these budding young environmental scientists.
Thank you, sir. Professor Dubey, today we are going to interact with you regarding the importance and significance of circular economy with context to the solid waste management. For our listeners who are not well aware of this topic, that is circular economy, which is a very practical topic, let me tell you nowadays. So what I understand, Professor Dubey, from circular economy, I mean, giving a more practical definition to our listeners, that circular economy would mean reduction of solid waste to a minimum, right? When a product reaches the end of its cycle, its material are kept within the economy. For example, plastic recycling. So these can be productively used again and again. I mean, any material if you want to, after it has served its purpose or the end of life, to create further value. Professor Dubey, now that you have worked so much in this field and you have been working for so long in the field of solid waste management and circular economy, and you have already working in collaboration with various organizations around the globe, and you being a true inspiration to many of us, including me, and it's an absolute honor to have you first of all on our podcast series. And so, sir, what is your general overview on any developing countries like India that generates a significant amount of plastic waste, with a large portion ending up in landfills or improperly disposed of, in some sense? So how can a circular economy approach be implemented effectively in the Indian context, or I would say the developing country context, to mitigate the plastic pollution and create economic opportunities?
So as you rightly said, like circular economy essentially means that you try to minimize the waste as much as possible. It's ideally we should go towards zero waste, but zero waste is not always possible. So you try to minimize it to make it less than 10%, even in single digits, and try to do the resource recovery, use the material, bring it back into the economy. And there is also a famous line which is used that use the resources, but don't use them up. So you have the resources which you want to bring it back, and it should be not downcycling. Also, it should be more of value-added products. So that's what. So it's not that you are reducing the value of the material. You are either keeping it at the same level, or you are even trying to make a better material out of that. So if you look at from the Indian context or the developing country context, as you have asked, our waste management infrastructure is still it's kind of informal and formal mix up. Informal sector does a very wonderful job in terms of collection of it, but when it comes to recycling, resource recovery, they don't have proper technologies, proper know-how to do it. So to bring the circularity in Indian plastic waste management, so circularity is not only the waste management part, it's basically starts from the very beginning, like how to design the product. So design for recyclability. So you design your bottles. For example, I'll give you an example that if you look at some of these plastic bottles which has a label on it. Earlier, the label used to be nice, very tightly glued to the bottles. Nowadays, if you are buying a water bottle, this Bisleri or Kinley or Ecofino, the label comes off quite easily. And it has been done on purpose because that label is actually filled plastic, which is a different kind of plastic. And then the bottle itself is mostly PET. So PET can be recycled separately. You can do a lot of things with PET. And film plastic, there is a limited options of what you can do with that. And the glue which is attached earlier, the glue used to become a contaminant for PET. Now I see many new products coming up where you have this label wrapped all around the bottle. So when you have this label wrapped all around the bottle, it becomes very difficult for plastic recycler to actually do the recycling of that plastic PET material. So that's not designed for recircularity. That's not designed for resource recovery. So as a circular economy, everybody has to, all the different stakeholders, from the manufacturing of those plastic bottles, manufacturing of the packaging material, the companies who are using those plastic bottles, the collection logistics of the recycled bottles, like after end of life, after I use if I buy Coca-Cola, I drink that Coca-Cola and then I drop that bottle, how that bottle will be collected back into the system so that it's collected in a clean way. Because if you make it dirty, that also becomes a problem. So in terms of developing countries, the collection logistics is one area, like having proper collection of these recyclable material and keeping it source segregated. Lack of source segregation actually is creating a lot of problem in waste management in countries like India. So we have to work a lot on getting the waste collected first of all, source segregated at the point of generation and also collected in a segregated form all the way to the treatment center, recycling facility, so that we can do the resource recovery properly. So those are some of the simple things which we can do and enhance the circularity in our plastic waste management.
Thank you, Professor Dubey, for setting up the stage with an amazing introduction. Sir, I would like to know from you that if we talk about contextualized about India, so organic waste comprises a significant portion of municipal solid waste in our cities. So like it often leads to issues like methane emission and public health concerns. So I would like to know that how can circular economy principles be leveraged to develop a sustainable waste management system for organic waste in our country, which would be focusing on promotion of practices like composting, biogas production and resource recovery, while we simultaneously address social and economic barriers and concerns.
Yes, so very good question actually on if you look at the organic waste, especially for a country like India, where we have more than 50% of our waste is actually organic in nature. In India, we have the organic waste starts from the agricultural farm. So if you look at the way we do our post-harvest management of produce that we have, like all the grains or fruits and vegetables. Unfortunately, we don't have proper storage facility. Storage facilities are very limited. So what happens is we actually waste a lot of food on the farm itself. And from the farm, it travels to a warehouse. From the warehouse through the trucks, it will come to the sabji mandis that we call it. And then from the sabji mandis, it comes to our market. And from our market, it comes to our home. So all along this chain, because of the lack of having proper, I would say, storage facility or even transportation facility. For example, if you look at right now, it's so much of heat out there. Even in place like Kharagpur, where we did not used to cross 40 that much, here we are consistently above 40 degrees centigrade for last many days. So with this kind of heat, this morning itself, I was in the like a fruits market. The fruit vendors are actually, they were complaining that the mangoes, which is very like new mangoes, are going bad just like anything because of this much of heat. They don't have proper storage for these mangoes. We don't have the refrigerated kind of cold storage facilities. So these adds up a lot of food waste into the system, and that becomes more than 50% of the food actually end up being wasted. So in terms of circular economy, we don't have to, again, as a circular economy suggests, that don't only look at the end of pipe. Don't only look at the end of life part. End of life is only one aspect of it. We have to look at how to have proper storage facility for the food and grains that we grow. How to have proper trucks which has those cold storage. So that if you happen to go to Western countries and and even in Singapore and other places, their trucks which carries fruits and vegetables maintain a certain temperature, like 4 degrees centigrade or below. It's like a refrigerator which is on the road. Unfortunately, we don't have that much of those in India. So we have to develop those kind of facilities. We have to, so that we can use the food. So food should not get wasted. So circular economy says that let's reduce the waste. Now, if you get the waste, at the end of it, so those are what we need to do upstream. Upstream, proper storage, proper cold storage facility, proper collection, proper transportation infrastructure for all these organics that we produce before they become the waste. And then when we use it up, whether from our markets or whether from our sabji mandis or whether at our home, when they end up into the waste stream, it's actually organic in nature. It's a huge source of energy. It's a huge source of fertilizer. We can make compost out of that. We can make biogas out of that. But then why we are not doing it? But what happens again, as I said in the previous, as a response to the previous question, the lack of source segregation is one of the aspects which is creating a huge problem in our Indian waste management system and also in many developing countries. Even some pockets in some of the developed countries, also in certain pockets, because of the lack of source segregation. So, for example, if you have if you have a lot of organic food waste or other organic waste, but if you mix it with plastics, if you mix it with some batteries, or if you have some non-degradable materials, sometimes even in the Indian context, we also get lots of street sweepings gets mixed up with that. So what you cannot really do much with that food waste, with that organic waste. So we have to make sure that they are collected in a segregated form. Then, depending on the market, as you asked, or as you rightly pointed out, socio-economic context. So depending on the market, so whether if you want to make compost, if you are sitting in Bombay or somewhere, Mumbai, if you're in a Mumbai or Chennai and other places, you take entire food waste of that particular city, produce compost. We have to look at whether we have market for those compost. Are we able to sell those compost? If the compost has to travel for several hundred kilometers, all the benefits of making the compost gets neutralized by the use of the fossil fuel that we will do in terms of the transportation. So you have to look at that aspect too. And then biogas. If you cannot compost it, you don't have proper market for compost, you can go for biogas. Now biogas which again you market for biogas. Collection of that, like what of the major problem with the biogas is the cleaning of the biogas. I will not say problem, I would rather call it a challenge. Challenge with biogas, the cleaning of biogas is still quite expensive. So whenever the natural gas prices goes down globally, the biogas industry suffer. So how to make that? If you look at the European countries where the biogas industry has really picked up, because the government gave a lot of subsidy to those biogas companies. So some sort of support from the government is also needed. See, but unfortunately, what happens is supporting industry in many times taken as in a negative way. But should not be taken in a negative way. One thing we need to make sure that it should be level playing field for all of us. See, if I'm starting a company, if you are starting a company, if somebody else is starting a company, we should all be given the equal opportunity by the government in terms of the support they're going to provide. It should not be that one person is being favored over the other. That's the problem. Otherwise, supporting industry to make sure that this biogas industry is really developed. So those things will help bring the circularity. It will create jobs. Economy of scale also has to be looked into. Some things you can do small scale, some you need to have a bigger scale. And then with organic waste, some of the newer technologies are also coming up. For example, some of you may have, if you have looked at our literature, our work in recent times, we have used a treatment technique, use hydrothermal carbonization, where HTC, in the short form, we call it HTC. So we have taken this food waste and the organic waste and produced biocarbon. And that biocarbon, we treated it further with pyrolysis, and to get that carbon material, which can be used as an energy storage material for our batteries. See, we are going for solar panel, we are going for wind energy, solar, wind, they are not 24/7. You have to store that energy. And storing that energy requires energy storage devices. Energy storage devices uses a lot of carbon material, which many times we are importing from overseas. Can we take this organic waste and produce that carbon material? Our lab results and initial pilot results suggest that it can be done. But we have to look at the logistics, we have to look at the economics, how to make the economics has to work. So all those aspects has to be explored and look from a socio-economic aspect too. And that will bring circularity in our food waste sector or organic waste sector. So that's kind of my thoughts on that particular question.
Thank you so much for your valuable insight on how unorganized organic waste leading to issues like methane emission, and how especially on how challenging the cleanliness of biogas. So I would like to know, how can a circular economy approach to waste management be leveraged to mitigate the unequal health burdens caused by the environmental pollution, particularly considering the interplay between lifestyle factors, socio-economic status, and environmental concern. Are there any documented studies that demonstrate the correlation between specific environmental concerns such as water contamination and health outcomes? If so, what lessons can be learned from these studies to inform policies and interventions that promote a circular economy and protect public health, especially for vulnerable populations?
So yeah, very good question, Akhil. So in terms of bringing circularity in overall, basically you're talking about an overall waste management sector, bringing circularity, and also when we talk about waste management, it is kind of part of our environmental management too. So there are a lot of studies has been done globally, especially for anybody in the audience who wants to really learn about circular economy. The one place that you should definitely go and check out is that Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I think many of you may have already been there. If you are not, you should definitely go and check it out. Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is kind of one of the initial, you could say, knowledge source for this circular economy, circularity aspects in terms of how to make our businesses circular. So they have done a detailed study on different sectors, including on end of life part for different types of like a waste stream, and they have tried to identify that how these So bringing circularity is how it is going to help in terms of not only reduce the water pollution, air pollution, and also, as you rightly mentioned, since if you have lesser water pollution, if you have lesser air pollution, you will have positive impact on health as well. So because most of the health issues that we get is because of the lot of contamination of our environment. So in terms of, if you look at, say, when we talk about this circularity, and which you may have also heard from other speakers and other platforms, see, if you, especially from an Indian context, just if you go 40, 50 years back, I know all of you are younger than that, so, but I'm also not that old. I will be not 50 yet, but it's if you just think about, when you talk to your grandfather, or if you hear the story from your grandfather or grandmother from their childhood days, you will find that most of the practices that we had in India, and not only in India, globally as well, it was circular in nature. We would use our say throughout the year, whatever the fruits or the vegetables, those waste will be there, that will go in a pit on the side of the kitchen area, and then usually people will have their vegetable garden connected with their house. And in villages, most of us used to live in the villages or the village kind settings, and then we would over the years, that all those food waste and uncooked like food scraps will go there, and then they will take it out before the growing season, and that will become like a fertilizer, the compost, and use it as a biofertilizer. So it was not a problem until we started putting plastics, putting a lot of non-degradable material, putting some heavy metals, when we started using all these batteries, electrical items, electronic items. So even a small traces of lead or mercury containing item, if it goes to that particular niche, it contaminates the whole compost that will come out of that particular source. So that started becoming a problem. So we had already, the circularity was kind of there in our day-to-day lifestyle. But over the last 40, 50 years, as we started making a variety of products and then not knowing how to really make use of that product. We talked about plastics earlier. See, if you look at the plastics, it's a single-use plastic, that 40% of that single-use plastic, that is creating a lot of nuisance. So plastic as a material has done wonderful things, isn't it? So we are talking right now, if you look at your device, I'm looking at my device, predominantly their plastic has contributed into making of these devices that we are using to communicate, even right as of now, as we are speaking, as we are discussing this topic. And same thing, you go to the hospitals, you go to anywhere you go, you see that lots of plastics are being used. So plastics as a material has done a lot of good things for us. It's a wonderful material. But the problem became is we started using too much of plastics. We started using too much of plastics, and we started, I use the term which you may have heard earlier, is we started abusing plastic actually. And especially with the single-use items. 40% of the material is single-use. I'll tell you one example, like for example, see, we have been told, and it's rightly told, that we should carry our own grocery bags. When you go to, say, Spencer's or other kind of those stores, you should carry your own grocery bag. So, but one thing you may have noticed, that when you are at a Spencer and other places, although you are bringing your own cloth bag, most of the material that we end up buying is wrapped in plastic. Even banana I see wrapped in plastic. Why? Because there has to be a barcode on it. Or all the fruits, vegetables you buy, they're all wrapped in plastic. You buy dal, chawal, sugar, salt, everything is wrapped in plastic. So, but it has done a good thing. So we need to come up with some sort of innovations there in terms of how to reduce the usage of plastic, especially the single-use plastics, the packaging material, like plastic utensils, plates, cups, those straws. So we need to cut them down and use a more environmental friendly material. So those kind of, and then when you try to do that, you need to, when we say circularity, when we talk about the circular economy approach, see, ultimately what we are looking at, when you rightly talked about that reducing of the health burdens, reducing of environmental pollution. So whenever you come up with these circular solutions, you have to also try to quantify that how much is really the reduction in environmental footprint. And that can be done using a concept or the tool of life cycle assessment. Many of you may have heard this term already. If you're not, you can just Google it. A lot of information is available. In fact, from IIT Kharagpur, we have an entire course on LC on YouTube, which you can watch. So life cycle assessment, it helps us to say, if I say that presently I have a certain way of managing things. Tomorrow, say Akhil comes up with a newer idea of that we should do it this because this is more circular. This will reduce carbon footprint. That's ultimate goal, isn't it? To reduce the environmental footprint. Now, the obvious question comes is that how much environmental footprint reduction are we achieving? So how to quantify that? So LC as a tool helps us to quantify that. So we can see how much reduction is there, because whenever you do any changes in the system, that is very, very, very much important to convince the policymakers, convince your investors that yes, it will reduce the carbon footprint by 30%, 40%, 10%, 20%, or if it may not reduce the carbon footprint. So that knowing that also is very, very important. So those kind of things can be done taking a circular economy approach in terms of that, and that will help us to because if you reduce the carbon footprint, that means how will you reduce the carbon footprint? By trying to reduce the emissions coming out of that. Whether you're talking about air emissions, whether you're talking about the water, like wastewater getting into the environment, or whether you talk about the solid waste getting into the environment. So if they don't end up into the environment, that will positively impact the water reduction in water pollution. It will have a reduction in water pollution, reduction in air pollution, reduction in soil and pollution. And if that happens, that will help us in terms of having better health. See, we cannot have a better, I keep on, again, you may have heard that as well. There cannot be a better, you cannot have a healthy economy without a healthy workforce. And for a healthy workforce, we have to reduce the pollution. And there's some of the circular economy approaches that I've tried to highlight that will help us to reduce the pollution.
Thank you, sir. So my question is, how can the concept of circular economy be applied for solid waste management, especially in reference to post-COVID-19 era?
So post-COVID-19, as you know, we ended up producing a lot of plastic waste and a lot of biomedical related waste and a lot of packaging waste as well. We were all at home and we were using lots of utensils, a lot of like Swiggy, Zomatos and those kind of orders. So it kind of led to a lot of in terms of different type of material coming out into the waste stream, and market and the industry did respond to it, and they come up with kind of managing of those. So in terms of COVID-19, in the post-COVID-19 era, one thing that we see a lot is, again, the packaging is too much. So we need to, again, I would say that most of the stuff we have already kind of highlighted earlier. The same thing we need to do, have proper source segregation. For any effective waste management practices, we need to have proper source segregation. Unless we have proper source segregation, things does not work very well. So you need to have proper source segregation, and then try to have do the techno-economic evaluation of whatever proposals you're coming up with. Try to see what like how COVID-19 affected our waste stream, and we should also be ready for some, say, God forbid, we should not get that problem again. But if something similar happens in future, we should learn how to respond to it based on the experiences we have during COVID-19. And circular economy, as I highlighted in the response to the previous question, so bringing like from very beginning in terms of having better product design, since we are using lots of packaging material, so how to design the packaging material so that it's easy to recycle, easy to resource recovery, how to go to like a less like a more biodegradable packaging material. So all those different aspects could be looked into to improve our waste management practices in the post-COVID era. In fact, for the audience benefit, and I think you may have seen that, Kumar, already, that we have a full, we did actually a detailed study on this particular topic itself, circular economy approaches for waste management in post-COVID-19, and that paper is there. One can access it through my Google Scholar, and if somebody is having difficulty accessing it, can always get in touch and we'll provide it to them. So, but those are the kind of a snapshot of that.
Thank you, sir, for your detailed insights on circularity in economy and otherwise. So my question is now, since we're towards the end of the podcast, that how can policymakers, businesses, and communities throughout India and across the globe collaborate to promote circularity in waste management, addressing both environmental and economic challenges that may be faced?
Yeah, very good question, and very difficult thing. Which because see, one of the most difficult thing is to work with people. So as you will be getting into the job force, you will see that working with machines and working with our coding and other stuff is much easier. But working with people, especially different stakeholders, bringing them together, as you rightly mentioned, policymakers, businesses, different communities, we have to collaborate. So in terms of collaboration, see, what we need to do is at least talk to each other to start with. What happens right now, whenever we go and talk to different stakeholders, many times they even don't know what their counterpart is up to. Like the industry doesn't know what the academia is working on. Academia doesn't know what is going on in the industry, and the policymakers also. Many times they are already mostly engaged in firefighting activities because they just something happens somewhere, they have to respond to it. So they don't get time to really innovate, think, and do things together. So one thing that I have seen as Dr. Pratik was giving my introduction, I had a chance to work with different organizations around the world. I have seen that where the organizations really bring all these different different stakeholders together on the same table and having a free and fair, free and frank discussion. See, there are a lot of good things can happen, but what is really possible as of today? Based on our limited infrastructure, based on our limited, many times the money is limited. So what is the best use of the resources that we have? So sitting down on a table where both industry, policymakers, lawmakers, of course the policymakers, bureaucrats, and academic people, and all the NGOs folks, we all have to sit down on the table and come up with our, okay, these are the things, these are our long-term plan. This is our short-term plan. Among the short terms, I think this will, based on the budget that we have, let's try to get these things first and honestly try to make it happen. What happens is many times we do it things just because to show so that we are doing something, but and we know that it is not a good long-term, not a good short-term solution. But we still do it because sometimes there is a pressure from the top. There is a thing that we have to show that we are doing something. And it also happens that many decisions are taken which is not technically sound, not economically sound as well. So we have to kind of, rather than going into the populist measure and doing always the firefighting at the 11th hour, say calling IITs only when there is a NGT ruling or there is a dump site is on fire. Whenever dump site is on fire, I know that my phone will start ringing. But that should not happen. Like my phone should ring at the other times too, where we can all sit down together and try to come up with a solution. So that's very, very important, bringing all these different stakeholders and working together. That's the only way to do it. See, individually, we will not be able to do that unless we come together, separate our ego, अपने ego को आप side में रखो, and then just look at the problem and come up with the solution. And solutions are there. See, most of the Indian problems have Indian solutions. From IITs, NITs, CSIR labs, a lot of research is being done, has been done, and which can solve the problem. Only thing is that we have to have a holistic view. We have to look at the things from a more circular economy point of view. Economics is very important, social benefit of that, and looking at how to make it good for the community and getting community to participate. Without community participation, waste is something which you get on daily basis. So unless the community participates with you on a daily basis, you and I will not be successful to do anything with that. So that's what I would like to say as kind of response to your question.
Thank you so much, sir. Great insights, and it's always an honor to listen to you. It's always so less that we feel, and we we definitely, want to listen to you more about the circular economy and the benefits of how, circular economy can play a role in diverse fields related to, the solid waste management. Once again, thank you so much, Professor Dubey, for your great insights on the topic of circular economy with context to the solid waste management. We started with how developing countries need to understand the solid waste management in terms of achieving this circular economy, and how a product development itself could be an issue if we talk about the material recycling. So a very good example given by you, sir, which is of PET bottle, plastic bottle that we come across, every day, and how the levels wrapped around the bottle also, could make things difficult for the recyclers, and how difficult it is then to maintain the circular economy in terms of its recycling. We discussed on challenges of organic waste generation, where lack of storage facility and also the transportation facility play a pivotal role given the rising unprecedented, the mercury levels, for example. So as because of this, the food spoilage is also enhanced, and before time, we could say that there is an overburden of or the generation of the organic waste, which is not as per the objective of the circular economy, because the major objective of circular economy is to minimize the waste and not get outplayed by such phenomenon where we can see unprecedented rise in the organic waste. So we discussed also the importance of source segregation, which needs to be relooked and followed with great zeal, making citizens aware about the same, its practicality and its significance. If we are not able to do this properly, which is the source segregation, the organic waste could be collected, it needs to be collected in a right manner, following and maintaining the circular economy, and how we can further bank on these organic waste in form of biogas, composting, and other utility that we can innovatively think of. We talked how subsidy from the government for any country or public policy could ensure the productive development of resource as well as the energy recovery, which is related to an effective solid waste management. Also, sir, we discussed on how research and development can play an important role in further understanding the benefits of circular economy. A very practical suggestion given by you, sir, is related to the need to observe the logistics, economics, its feasibility, given the scale-up challenges also that we face sometimes by kind of following too much of a lab scale feasibility reports. We continued our discussion on lifestyle factors, socio-economic status, and environmental concern, where you rightly pointed that how modernization or the practice of modern techniques has deteriorated the traditional mechanism and approach. You gave few examples that was so connected to our daily life, and I'm sure our audience would like to understand further like to understand that how these modern techniques have deteriorated the traditional mechanism. An example was, of course, in form of overuse of plastics, for example, in packaging material, single-use plastic also. How these all things we have accepted as a part of modern lifestyle, and how we need to bring and accept the environment-friendly material to bring the circular economy into picture. But we need to quantify also all these, that how far we have gone successful in reduction of the environmental impact, or how far we were successful in reducing the carbon footprint by accepting those sustainable material as an alternative to the conventional material which were so harsh to the environment. And one of the very important tool, as we all know, I think whole India knows that you have been a pioneer in working with the life cycle assessment, and you have published quite a lot successful papers, sir. In a good impact journals, and we all used to follow that, actually, at least me. And how we can further use this circular economy and life cycle assessment tool to convince the policymakers, investors, that how the quantity wise and how much reduction in impact has really happened with the use of any eco-friendly product. We also discussed on how circular economy could play a significant role after COVID-19, where once again the focus on source segregation was emphasized by you. How we can learn how to respond to such unprecedented events like COVID-19, and how better packaging material could be invented and designed, like we discussed previously earlier today in our talk, and how these simple yet effective things can promote the circular economy in such situations and also in general. We concluded with the challenges related to framing of policy, where especially collaboration was emphasized in a way how industry, policymakers, and academicians could come up together to widely understand the contextual situation. How we all can, bring an effective circular economy by understanding the resources, its limitation, then accordingly coming up with a short and long-term plan, and in turn the solutions which might be effective at a good scale. There could be some solutions that may not be economically feasible, which I'm sure our listeners would be understanding as well. And mostly the decisions taken at last hour is not really a good attribute, I would say, for any policymaker or the government to accept it. And hence, we all stakeholders must separate, like you said, sir, we must separate our ego and come collectively to define a holistic approach, in this field of circular economy, with context to the solid waste management. So once again, sir, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on our E2C podcast series. And I'm sure, sir, that our listeners had not had enough of today and would like to further interact with you. So would you mind, sir, if I share your email ID, in the information on our Spotify or, the Amazon Music, if that is okay with you, sir?
Yeah, that's fine. You can share my email ID. Even you can share my WhatsApp number as well. So that's also okay, because I do try to respond to people's WhatsApp. I do get a lot of WhatsApp messages from unknown numbers, and I do try to respond back to them. Yes. So no problem. Yeah.
Thanks so much, sir, for your great insights once again. And on that note, listeners, it was great to have you once again on our E2C podcast series, and we will see you in the next episode. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.